There it goes. Okay. Okay. Everyone can see the right version of the slides. And we will kick this off. Maybe, if I can find where my mouse is. Here it is. Okay. So, as you guys all remember, party manners, stay on mute unless you're speaking. We like to have new friends talk if we can. Make sure that we have everyone getting a chance to take a turn. And then if you're shy or if you don't want to interrupt the conversation, you can throw some comments in there into the chat like Renata just did. And we will try and keep tabs on the chat too. So if there's a question that comes up in there, we will try and grab it later when we see it. So that's that. And then if you do want to speak, all you have to do is just raise your hand, whether that be in the Zoom toolbar, which you can see how to do that there through the reactions menu, or you can go old school and just like raise your hand. Usually Mary Kay is the one who calls on everybody, but I don't believe Mary is joining today. So it means that Kristen and I have to see you ourselves. So we'll do our best. And I think that's the rules. Oh, and spoilers. Do we not have spoilers? We read this as if it's the first time, so that if it is your first time, we don't ruin it for you by talking about stuff that comes later. So you only know things that happen through chapter 6. So don't be offended if someone yells spoilers at you if you get ahead of yourself. Those are the ground rules. All right, so we're on chapter 4. This is month number 2. So we are learning that Anne once really did have a real serious grown-up love, but her family and Lady Russell decided that Wentworth simply wasn't Elliot material. So she let him go, and he had all of his big feelings, and his pride was hurt, and so he stomped off. And he's going to prove everybody wrong. Anne then spends the next 8 years quietly regretting the whole thing, and her family continues to be completely horrible to her the whole time. And now we know why Anne does not like Bath, because she went to go stay there right after all of this sadness happened in her life. So that was a short-lived mystery. So there's more Navy stuff. This is going to be a theme. There's lots of Navy stuff in this book, so get used to it. When Wentworth meets Anne for the first time, he is in the country, having just been made a commander, which is the rank that you see there, kind of a middle-ish rank. They were in charge of sloops. You can see a picture of a sloop here, which would be a small warship of about 20 guns. The reason he's on land, there's always more commanders than there are sloops. So he is on half pay. So he is not even making his full salary when he meets her. So he's, maybe a little bit of a deadbeat. And he's just hanging out waiting for a ship to become available. So that's why he's in the country, and that's what enables him to meet her. Just as a little bit of interesting infos, they mention in 1806 the Battle of St. Domingo, which is where our hero distinguished himself and was promoted to commander. That was a real battle. It happened on February 6th. The British fleet went up against the French and had a spectacular success. And the guy that led all that, his name was Sir John Thomas Duckworth. He was made a baronet in 1813, so we got lots of baronets. Interestingly, Austen's brother Francis was also made in 1798, where he was promoted to be a commander. And there's a quote. I'm going to read it so that I get it right. Jane sends in a letter to Cassandra. He was yesterday raised to the rank of commander and appointed to the Petterel sloop. As soon as you have cried a little for joy, you may go on. And then just over 7 years later, Frank actually fought in the Battle of St. Domingo. So this is a little inside joke for Jane and her family, where she's giving Frederick Wentworth sort of Frank's real life backstory. So if we go on. So we've added to our timeline the Battle of St. Domingo. So you've got here right in the middle, February of 1806, and then in the summer of 1806 is when we first meet Wentworth. And Mary has a question. Feel free.
Sorry, I've just never approached it quite from this angle before. This is interesting. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm wondering when you say he's waiting for, a spot to come open so he can command a sloop, does that mean he has to wait for somebody to die in battle before he can do that or be wounded or something like that? How does that happen? Does anybody know?
Actually. So he has to be a boat has to become available, whether that is someone gets promoted and now they need someone to take this class of ship, or someone could die and they need someone to go step in and take over. It's however a vacancy becomes available.
Maybe they rotate so people can get time on land.
Maybe, I don't know the answer to that.
And whether or not he's paid enough to be able to command the ship.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Brenda. So he's gonna be the bigger your ship is, the more likely you're gonna take some pretty good enemy ships, and that's how you get money. So the bigger your ship is, the bigger your title is, and the more likely it is that you're gonna make good money. So this is a good deal for him. He just has to get his assignment to his ship in order to continue to grow his wealth. So he has prospects when he meets Anne, but they have not yet been realized. And Brenda also has some questions about the battle in the chat, and Kristen has answered them. Kristen, do you want to talk to what you put in there?
I just looked it up real quick, and the battle
because
was.
I didn't know the answer.
I did not know the answer either. The battle was part of Britain's campaign to prevent Napoleon from reestablishing slavery in San Domingo, which we now know as Haiti, because they had just gone through their revolution there and abolished it. And so this was this was Britain trying to keep him from reestablishing it.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Okay, so we will continue to map the real life events that are happening in the larger world that tie to the actions in the book as we go. So we're starting to flesh in our little timeline here. Okie dokie. Kristen, you're up. I'll let you keep going.
Thank you. So this chapter has one of the most beautifully written phrases in Austen, in my opinion. It's half the sum of attraction on either side might have been enough, for he had nothing to do and she had hardly anybody to love. That about just sums it up. But what do you think? Let's open the discussion to talk about what we think this says about society's gender expectations at the time. What were men and women's roles, and how is that reflected in this phrase? Anybody have any ideas? I know
Well,
some.
I think it's a woman's opinion of a young man having nothing to do, because it's unlikely that he wasn't like other vigorous young men having lots to do, learning to be a man. Whereas what she says about a woman is so true, I think. And she states it when she's talking to the friends of Wentworth about how women are isolated and alone and with their thoughts. Very, very compassionate.
Thank you, Brenda. Anybody else have a thought?
I think it's very true in Anne's case because she doesn't have anybody to love. I mean, her family doesn't really love her. I mean, to be honest, they don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe the hardly is who does love her. We know that one person loves her at this point.
Well, Lady Russell, I'm
Lady
sure
Russell.
loves her.
Yeah.
But hardly
She's maybe the
anybody. I
only
mean,
one.
I think that part is true.
Mhm.
But I do think he may not have anything to do is relative.
Yes, I mean he doesn't have a ship to command.
Right.
He is not a property owner, so he has no property to take care of. So he doesn't have a job basically at this point. I'm sure men though being out in the world have plenty to do. Like Brenda said, he could be going to a club, he could be going to the races, he could be doing all sorts of things that he could be going to a coffee house, which women weren't allowed to do at this point. So there's plenty for him to do, but maybe nothing of any substance to do, maybe is what the narrator means here. Kat says gender expectations, women should take an available man to secure her future. Yes, grab them while you can, because they're dying at sea and on land. from
Get
that
the rich
Napoleon
ones
guy.
before they die at sea.
Yes, get them before they die at sea. So if you the eligible men to eligible women at this point in England was out of sync because of the Napoleonic Wars.
On both sides, on the army side and the navy side. That's why,
That
if you
makes
guys
sense.
remember in Pride and Prejudice, there was all that talk in the beginning about how there were too many ladies and not enough men because of the gender imbalance at the time.
Much like an AGM.
Much like yeah.
For different reasons. Any
Okay.
other thoughts about gender roles? Duana, yes. You've got to unmute.
Details. Uh, well, I think in Anne's case, there was no, I mean, he could go on the ship and get killed right away, and she would be left with, she would be in really a bad straits. In other words, Lady Russell wasn't so much against him per se, but if he came back a successful captain, it would have been different, but she didn't want Anne to end up, I mean, at least where she was now, she had comfortable housing, food, things, to do. But if she got stuck in a little cabin someplace, it wouldn't be, it would be really hard on her. So
Duana,
it
as
it was
always,
the fact that he didn't have anything at this time, not that it wasn't something that could be done in the future.
And
as
So
that's
always,
she,
our
Duana,
next
you predict the future because
Yeah.
that is the next slide.
next slide.
yeah.
So,
Slide says,
Kristen, carry forward Duana's thought.
thank you for that lovely segue, Duana. So another passage from this chapter is Captain Wentworth had no fortune. He had been lucky in his profession, but spending freely what had come freely had realized nothing. So here's a little, Jennifer and I don't remember reading this in the last couple times we read it. This was a new, I love these close readings that we're doing because you get, you can look at every single sentence very in-depthly. And like, look, he's throwing his money around. He doesn't look like he's a saver. He doesn't look like he's very responsible. So do you think, knowing that or seeing that, would you have advised Anne differently than Lady Russell did?
And I love that I noticed this line and Kristen didn't. And when I said, "Hey, did you see this?" She's like, "Oh."
No, I
because
didn't.
this is your favorite hero and not mine.
I know. I'm like, darn.
A chink in the armor.
Yeah. But he's 8 years older now.
Yeah, he's with her, clearly.
I think that's what I was trying to bring into what
Yeah.
I was saying, but it wasn't as though he went into debt, and he's also got his brother that it looks like he had a fairly good upbringing in that. The family is, pretty good. So I think it was just his youth, and he would stabilize as he got older. But at this particular point, Lady Russell did have, she wanted to protect Anne because Anne has had nothing, really, when you come down to it. And she probably didn't even realize the reality of that.
I would have totally told Anne not to go down that path. For the record,
great.
I will go publicly and say that I think Lady Russell was in the right.
Yeah, Anne, unfortunately, so Kat says Anne, unfortunately, would have had to consider his prospects.
Yeah.
Realistically at that time rather than just affection or love. Exactly.
Neither of them have any money. She has a useless title and he has exhibited no evidence of being financially responsible. If you're the parent figure in this that has some responsibility, like looking out for her future.
Yep.
Interesting.
Refresh my memory. How old is Captain Wentworth at this time? 8 years later. How much older than Anne was he? Was it like 3 years or 4?
Ooh, I can't remember how much older he is than her. I think it's less
I
than
don't either.
10 years. Kristen, you have to fact check that.
Okay, hold on.
Renata asks, why didn't they write to each other? Well, so they couldn't have done that unless they were engaged. So,
Really?
yeah, a single man cannot write to a single woman within the bounds of propriety at this time. So the only way that he could have written to her is if they had a formal engagement. And since she broke off the engagement, they couldn't have corresponded.
I'm just going to make one point as a devil's advocate here, in that they were both 8 years younger, and he was just starting out in his career at that time.
Yep.
So he couldn't have been successful and rich and wealthy and all of that because he just started.
Agreed. Even more reason to have caution. They're babies. They
Yeah,
don't
but
know what they're
I'm
doing.
sorry, but these people in Austen's novels in the Regency get married all the time with no money. I mean, I'm
But if
I'm
you're
just
if
saying,
you're the parent and you think that this young woman has better prospects coming, what
yeah,
wouldn't you
I
want
mean,
her
I
to-
get that, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying in her defense that
Mhm.
just saying that, Lady Russell saying that is not necessarily something that applies to every situation. I mean,
Sure.
it, they get married for love all the time and, struggle like people do.
We can talk
But
about that again when we read Mansfield Park.
yeah, because that doesn't
Yeah.
work out so
It
great.
doesn't end well for her.
Doesn't work out very great for Ms. Price.
Right.
Okay, so more on Wentworth next in the next slide, Jennifer. Because this also kind of comes into Lady Russell's thoughts about him. His personality type is listed as sanguine, which is how I pronounce it. Is that how it's pronounced? Sanguine?
No, it's sanguine.
Sanguine. That's one of those words that I read 700 times before I ever heard it spoken, and I still don't hear it spoken that much. Sanguine.
Sanguine penguin.
Oh, thank you. Sanguine like penguin. Thank you.
We all now have homework. Everyone has to use the word sanguine in your normal everyday life between now and the next book club.
I mean, I know how to pronounce choleric and melancholic and phlegmatic, but or phlegmatic. Do you say the G? I think you do say the G. Anyway, maybe I don't know how to pronounce it.
Well, no.
So there are
Greek
four
flag.
temperaments. And this is an ancient theory that there are four basic personality types, the four I just said: sanguine, choleric, melancholic, and phlegmatic. They originated with Hippocrates, who linked personality to the balance of the four bodily fluids, or the humors, which were blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. And people were thought to either have a dominant temperament or a mix of several. The word temperament comes from temperare, to mix, reflecting the idea of balancing qualities. If a person tends to be too happy or optimistic, especially in bad or difficult circumstances, they are sanguine, and they can assume, one could have assumed that they had too much blood in proportion to the other humors. Too calm and reserved was being phlegmatic, from having too much phlegm. Excessively sad or melancholic, from having too much black bile, and too angry or choleric, from excessive yellow bile. So this was used for centuries, but it was abandoned after the 1850s when medicine came in and said that doesn't really work. So he is called sanguine by Lady Russell during this part of their history. So what does this say? I think this kind of goes along with what we've been talking about, Lady Russell. So kind of like, can somebody give us a summary of all the faults that Lady Russell thinks that Wentworth has, so that that's why Anne should not marry him? Anybody want to sum it up?
He's a bit optimistic in his prospects without a whole lot of evidence to back it up.
Yup. Especially, and that's especially in bad or difficult circumstances. It's war and anything goes, and you have no idea how things are going to turn out. And he seems to just be too happy-go-lucky about everything. He's got money, he spends money, he thinks he's going to get more. Joanna says he's what we would call cocksure, a little too sure of himself. Exactly. And as as an older woman, as Lady Russell is, like, shut up, little boy. Like, she's been around, she goes to London and Bath. She knows what things are about, and she is just not, she doesn't think he's good enough for her Anne.
And she's also a widow. So we don't know how her husband passed away, but she has lived her life and lost her husband. So she knows what that means.
Yeah.
She doesn't think he's serious.
Right.
Right. Right. Oh, Claire has something to say.
I have a question actually. Do you think sanguine is sort of a very polite way of calling somebody an airhead? Like, because if he's, which in my mind would make sense as to why Lady Russell's like, don't go with this guy. Because if he's like a little too optimistic, then like maybe he's not accurately planning how to take care of Anne in the future. Or does my question make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, like maybe he's not serious enough about those things. So
Yeah.
he wouldn't be serious enough about taking care of Anne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe he doesn't actually see it. Maybe he doesn't understand the reality of the situation.
Uh-huh. Right. Because he's a man out in the world. Yes. Thank you, Claire. Anybody else before we move on? Okay, take it away, Jennifer.
Alrighty. Here we go. Okay, another banger of a sentence in Persuasion. She had been forced into prudence in her youth. She learned romance as she grew older, the natural sequel of an unnatural beginning. So, the question we have for the group is, how does this line hint at Anne's early struggle between prudence and romance? And how might that tension have shaped her mindset at the start of the novel or to where we are at this point? Terry says the belief of being prudent and self-denying. So I think we'll see a lot more of Anne's character as we go, but certainly she is self-denying. she's definitely someone who takes a lot in and doesn't put a lot out.
How about
I think she's learned that being prudent isn't always the right choice. I mean, maybe it was the right choice then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Prudence doesn't always pay off.
yeah, that sometimes you need to take a little risk and follow your heart. I think that's what that means.
Mm-hmm.
her early struggle? Would it have been from her mother, who had been prudent with the family's finances, and maybe she also saw the lack of romance between mom and
Her own father.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And being her mother's favorite, she would have been closer to her and saw more of that. It's a good point.
Yeah. We have something in the chat that was good. Let's see. I can't see the chat anymore. Let's see. This is a great point, Terry. That the only thing that made her feel better about her own choice was that it was better for him, for it to not be tied to her. So if it had only been for herself, she couldn't have abided it. But since she led herself to believe that it was also better for him, and that's how she got through it.
Yeah. And that goes back to the self-denying comment. We are going to see in the next chapter just how much Anne is willing to take on for the well-being of others around her. So, all right. In the sake of, we have a lot to get through, I'm going to keep us rolling here. Chapter 5. The Crofts arrive to inspect Kellynch Hall. They are blissfully unaware of the emotional landmine they've stepped on, and Anne politely swallows 8 years of feelings, to our point from the last slide. Lady Russell plans to host Anne, but her schedule gets all messed up, and so Anne's rerouted to Upper Cross like a well-mannered package. Mrs. Clay secures her place as Elizabeth's bath companion in spite of her horrid freckles and that projecting tooth. Mary dramatically declares herself ill until Anne arrives, at which point she makes a miraculous recovery worthy of a Regency-era daytime Emmy. Anne visits both upper cross houses and immediately clocks the difference between lively and affectionate and chaotic with a side of noise. Okay, so this line is pretty hilarious. We get this lovely description of Sir Walter. The baronet will never set the Thames on fire, but there seems to be no harm in him. This is Mr. Admiral Croft's assessment of Sir Walter. So if you've ever heard the phrase, he's not going to set the world on fire, it's the same here. I think that probably is a connection, though more widely applicable than the Thames for the non-British of us. But it's kind of unclear the derivation of this. There were occasions where like lightning would strike and set brush on fire on the Thames, so there'd be like all these fires that would occasionally happen. Obviously, there's the Great Fire of London that burned the whole place down in the 1600s, 1666. That seems like a good year to remember. So lots of opportunities or examples for this phrase to kind of have pulled in some meaning, but basically what he's saying is he's not out there making things happen, but he's not an evil person. So that is the quick vocab there for a little bit of fun. And Mrs. Clay, there's that protruding tooth. I loved that picture because I'm like, oh, that really works. So Mrs. Clay, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about her because we have this super weird scene where Anne feels like compelled to talk to Elizabeth about Mrs. Clay going to Bath. So why are Anne and Lady Russell so freaked out about the idea of Mrs. Clay going to Bath? What do they think is going to happen? And why is Anne's belief that Elizabeth is going to be more to be pitied than herself if what they fear comes to pass? So what is happening here? Why do we care so much about Mrs. Clay and where she goes?
They want to protect her father.
From what?
Mrs. Clay's ulterior motives.
Which we think are what?
He's a rich guy and he's lonely.
And he is. And why would it matter to them? Why would they care if their father got married again?
Well, they're so fastidious about rank and standing, and she is definitely a match way beneath him.
She is.
Part of it.
She's also young, and she has already demonstrated
that's right.
that she has the ability
Elizabeth
to
will be replaced as the lady of the hall, and her children will be replaced.
Yeah. Well, so Elizabeth is probably more to be pitied because she will be reduced, right? She will no longer be the lady of the home. But also, if Mrs. Clay produces a son, there's a new heir in town. So there's a whole lot of family dynamics that get really messed up if Mrs. Clay marries into their family and produces a new heir. So given that, I think we can kind of guess why Lady Russell is freaked out about that. What do you think about Anne being so concerned about Mrs. Clay producing a new heir? What does that tell you about Anne?
Well, I think she doesn't want to see her father taken advantage of, because that's what that would be.
Would it? He's happy. He's married. He's got a wife to keep him company. He's got a new baby. Why would that be taking advantage of him?
Well, she doesn't love him. She's only in it for the money and the position.
That doesn't mean she'd be a bad wife.
I think she's worried she has no prospects, and if she's displaced by this little baby, then she has no visible means of support.
Yep, her entire life security will now hinge on the whims of a toddler.
Right.
As those of us who have read Sense and Sensibility realize can be a thing.
Right. So again, this is another one of those moments for those of us who have less of a emotional attachment to Persuasion can maybe look at some of the characters a little more dispassionately. Anne does have financial considerations, and she knows what they are.
She no dummy. Oh,
She's
Dewana,
not
I was
stupid.
gonna say.
Go ahead, Dewana. You're on mute again.
Got on mute.
I'm going to close that window in case that.
I got it.
There you go.
It would be much harder than Elizabeth because she would lose more than Anne. Anne has already trained herself to survive. She's built a little life based on romance,
Right.
Walking through the gardens and stuff, which of course they could lose. So it could be devastating for the sisters, and they don't get along right.
Yeah. And like Joanna says in the chat, Elizabeth will be displaced as mistress of Kellynch, so she will no longer have a place of prominence.
Yeah, I don't think it would be worse than Mr. Elliot inheriting the estate, but because but that will happen, that would happen sooner. So having the baby come along would be a little bit more wiggle room until they're necessarily displaced. Claire has a question, or
I was gonna ask along the lines of what Terry just said. Why does it make a difference if there's a half brother who inherits versus Mr. Elliot?
Yeah, I mean,
according
in
to
my
the
opinion, I
laws,
think it would be better if it's a half brother, because at least there's
Right.
something.
Well,
And also
Other
it's
than this guy who's
raised-
already thrown them away.
It's probably not
Exactly.
the brother
Who
that's
they
the
don't
issue.
want-
It's Mrs. Clay.
Yeah, it's Mrs. Clay.
He's the one
It
that's
is
going
Mrs.
to
Clay.
decide where Elizabeth and Anne go.
Yeah.
Because the baby is going to, when Sir Walter gets to the point where he's incapacitated.
Oh,
or he
because
passes
she's
away.
the step.
She's the
Oh,
mistress of Kellynch now. So
Yeah.
Mrs. Clay would take that over. If Mrs. Clay loves her, though, then she might keep her around, maybe Anne less so. Elizabeth say something, then I'm going to say something about Anne. Mrs. Clay will not help family finances. That's a good point, Leah. So she's not going to bring anything to the marriage. So not only are we snotty because she's not Elliot material, like blood-wise, but also money-wise. Elizabeth?
Yes. So this is my favorite book, and Anne is my favorite heroine, but I think we're kind of giving her a pretty light touch and like kind of a pass. And I think that this does say that she actually cares a little bit more about status and class.
Yeah.
And I also think that we're giving her a little bit of a pass with how she broke off the engagement. Like, yes, Wentworth was maybe not in the best financial position, but I think part of it was part of like Lady Russell's position and her father's position was about class, not just about money.
Yeah.
I think Elizabeth and I are going to be friends. That's what I just heard.
Yeah. And Claire says she agrees with Elizabeth. And the thing is that, I just lost it. So what I wanted to say is that, Elizabeth is dumb. I think Austen is using this contrast between Anne and Elizabeth to show like Elizabeth is all about she is stupid because she doesn't realize it. She likes having somebody to fawn over her, which Anne will not. And I feel like she's doing it to spite Anne. So there's it's like she's petty, she's stupid, and she's selfish. And so I think it's more to say something about Elizabeth badly as to say something good about Anne. But we're going to find out exactly what Anne thinks about class structure as we go along, and who is worth her time and who's not worth her time. And I feel like this is showing Anne in maybe just like Goldilocks just right area of maybe the amount of snottiness that Austen herself would have had as a middle class, an upper middle class person, because we all have our class judgments no matter where we fall on the pecking order. And so this is showing us the first clue into what Anne's is. Joanna.
I'm a little, I don't quite see it that way. I don't think it's class. I think it's having a home. that she loves because she can be romantic there. You know, um, and also I don't think they really know, but this would, I mean, Mrs. Croft would get them out of there and you have no idea where they'd go. You know, Elizabeth would lose everything. And she would be much more reduced than she is now. So it's their real lives that Anne is more thinking about.
Okay, I love that we have such good discussion. Who knew it was going to be so controversial? I love it. Okay, so we're going to keep going, and you guys are going to have to cherish every moment because this is, like Kristen said, going to be one of the few opportunities to hear everything about furniture and houses and clothes because we don't get a lot of that in this book.
If you're in a book club with me, you have to get the house tour. I'm so very sorry, but I feel compelled to give it to you. So we're going to see two houses right now. Both of the houses at Uppercross. So we have Uppercross, the manor, and we have Uppercross Cottage. So what we learn in this chapter is that Mary and Charles have transformed a farmhouse that's on the estate of the grand house, of the main house, into a fashionable cottage. And that's participating in a trend that reimagined dwellings that are really associated with poor tenants on someone's estate into these fancier things to kind of like Marie Antoinette's little Hermitage at Versailles. So like let's play poor and have a cute little cottage. And so we know that, so they're turning a farmhouse into a cottage. They're not turning a farmhouse into a manor. They have chosen specifically to turn it into a cottage. And so what you're seeing here is a cottage ornée, which was a building specifically to be a cottage, but a grand cottage that had halls and dining rooms and parlors that your tenant cottages would not have had. We also see that theirs has a veranda and French windows and other prettinesses that signal their focus on aesthetic display rather than functionality. And we also see that their once elegant furniture is now worn after 4 summers and 2 children. And so they're not being responsible. This harkens back to Lady Russell's comment about the women with children being the best preservers of furniture. So Mary's got 2 and her furniture is trashed after 4 years. So that has come to pass in the same novel. Next slide. Tenant house be the equivalent of a shotgun house. Shotgun houses, I would say maybe like duplex shotgun houses, Renata. A shotgun house is a house that has one room right after the other going backwards with no hallway. So you can shoot in the front window and go all the way to the back of the house. That's why it's a shotgun house. And they are prevalent in the Southeast. But they were used, I think the parallel at Renata would be that those were used for factory workers, and these are tenant farmers. So yeah, they're worker houses, kind of affordable or given by the company houses. So that's where the equivalent is.
I also think shotgun houses were developed because the plots of land were small.
Yeah, they were narrow. They were trying to fit as many near the factory as they could.
Right. And on a big piece of land, they put them one after the other.
Yeah. There's a neighborhood of them right over there in my town. Okay, so here we get a huge and vivid description of the sitting room of the great house. So I'm going to beg your indulgence and read it. To the great house accordingly they went, to sit the full half hour in the old-fashioned square parlor with a small carpet and shining floor, to which the present daughters of the house were gradually giving the proper air of confusion by a grand pianoforte and a harp, flower stands, and little tables placed in every direction. Oh, could the originals of the portraits against the wainscot, could the gentlemen in brown velvet and the ladies in blue satin have seen what was going on, have been conscious of such an overthrow of all order and neatness? The portraits themselves seem to be staring in astonishment. So here we get our haunted house from Disney where the portraits on the walls come to life. The Musgroves, like their houses, were in a state of alteration, perhaps of improvement. The father and mother were in the old English style and the young people in the new. Mr. and Mrs. Musgrove were a very good sort of people, friendly and hospitable, not much educated, and not at all elegant. Their children had more modern minds and manners. So we're going to talk about the contrast between the older and the newer generation, and what this parlor would have looked like. So they have a small carpet covering their shining floor. And at the time, the finest and most expensive carpets were Axminster carpets that were made in the Devon town of the same name. They were produced in a way similar to how Turkish rugs are made by creating handmade knots of wool. But a major innovation of the late 18th and early 19th centuries was the fitted carpet, made from narrow strips that were sewn together on site. These came in two kinds of piles, one more expensive than the other. And so that was a major innovation. And now we see floor to floor carpeting all over the place, or we're all pulling them up to expose our floorboards again, like I have done in this house. But this was a new innovation. I had no idea before I started working on this period that they were that early, but they really were. And then also another thing that's happening is in grand houses, the reception rooms used to be on what we call the second floor, what the English call the first floor. And so you went up a grand hallway or staircase to the rooms where the public rooms were. But now they're being moved down to the ground floor so that you can have these beautiful big French doors and windows that come all the way to the floor so you can look at your beautiful garden right outside. So this is a change that's happening at this time. So on the left, you see a 1760s interior, and then on the right you see an 1816 interior by Humphrey Repton, who is mentioned as a garden designer in Mansfield Park. So he was a prevalent garden designer and interior designer, or interiors writer of the time. You can go to the next slide. So the narrator comments that the daughter's additions to the parlor upper cross have resulted a proper air of confusion. And so this reminded me of the description from Humphrey Repton's Fragments of the Theory and Practice of Landscape Garden, in which he says, modern habits have altered the uses of a drawing room. Formerly, the best room in the house was opened only a few days in each year, where the guests sat in a formal circle, which you see there on the left. But now the largest and best room in the gentleman's house is that most frequented and inhabited. It is filled with books, musical instruments, tables of every description, and whatever can contribute to the comfort or amusement of the guests, who form themselves into groups at different parts of the room. And in winter, by the help of two fireplaces, the restraint and formality of the circle is done away. So in a time period when things are becoming more democratic and meritocracy is coming in, which we're going to talk about a lot with the Navy, the same kind of thing is happening in interiors. There are loose groups of furniture placed around the room, so you can be doing what you want to be doing with the people you want to do. You're not sitting in a big circle in the middle of the room having a conversation, which I have been to parties lately in which that is still happening. Everybody pulls their chairs in the circle. One commentator said, do you see the portrait on the wall in the room on the left with the circles? So it's like the matriarch of the family is lording over the conversation in this room with the chairs all in the circle. So this is something that's happening in interiors during this time. And you would have, oh, sorry, can you go to the next screen? So instruments such as harps, as well as pianofortes, which recently had surpassed harpsichords as the favorite keyboard instrument for amateurs. You would have had that in a public room, so you could entertain guests with it. So they have a new harp in theirs. In the middle, you'll see examples of plants and flower stands that were often multi-tiered and of elaborate design. So those were popular. And then also, they said little tables placed in every direction. Something new at this point were these nested tables, or they were called quartetto tables. And they're very elegant but they fold up together and then you can place them around the room. So again, for those different sets of people doing their own thing around the room, but doing it with the people they want to be doing it with. Next slide. So the elder Musgroves would have grown up with furniture produced in the richly carved and heavily ornamented style that you see in the work of Thomas Chippendale, which you see on the top left. It's heavily carved, it's very elaborate, it's kind of ponderous, very heavy. And then the new style that was coming in is the neoclassical style, which is based on Greek and Roman archaeology. There's columns and fluting. It's much lighter. It's much more airy. And which is why in the 1941 Pride and Prejudice, they have Sheraton interiors with these light things, but then they have these big skirts that I just fear that the tables are gonna be knocked over as they go through, because they're wearing Victorian skirts, which is part of the reason then heavy furniture comes back in the Victorian era. That all goes hand to hand. So on the bottom or on the right, you see some neoclassical chairs in contrast with the Chippendales from Sheraton. And then these are even at the bottom are even more beautiful kind of Regency era furniture, the kind of thing that the Prince Regent would have been using in his homes. And I see something in the chat. Let's see, Renata, we're going to talk about, it's all Georgian because George IV is still a George, but we're going to talk about clothing next. So speaking of that, can you go to the next slide? So a few decades after neoclassicism came to furniture and architecture, it entered the realm of fashionable dress. The narrator of Persuasion comments that the father and mother were in the old English style and the young people in the new. Henrietta and Louisa were young ladies of 19 and 20 who were now like thousands of other young ladies living to be fashionable, happy, and merry. Their dress had every advantage. Next slide. So this is one of my favorite prints of all time. It is called Too Much and Too Little, or Summer Clothing for 1556 and 1796. So you see the Elizabethan era there on the left with like so many layers and all the gewgaws and all the trimmings. And then on the right is neoclassical dress that is so slim and maybe too little that you are seeing through her garments to her underbits, her own underbits there. And so maybe we can find something in the middle is what this satirical printmaker is saying. I also love this print because there are portraits on the wall aghast looking at the other at the other era of things. So I think this is just such a great slide for print to illustrate what's going on in this part of Persuasion. Next slide. So the aim of neoclassical dress was a much more natural look, and the silhouette was simplified and slimmed down. It was inspired by the styles worn by the women in the golden age of Greece, and it's inspired by statues and paintings that were being discovered in Pompeii and Herculaneum and other archaeological excavation of the time. To imitate the clinging draperies of antiquity, the neoclassical gown had a low and softly rounded neckline, short sleeves, and a high waistline over a column-shaped skirt. Next slide. So neoclassical dress brought not only new silhouettes, but new fabrics. 18th century fashion favored luxurious velvets, brocades, and damasks, often with floral designs. Silk was the costliest fiber and was imported from Italy and France. And velvets and lace were from Italy, and linen was from Germany and Holland. The brown velvet and blue satin worn by the Musgroves' ancestors signal significant wealth. Both velvet and satin refer to a weave, not a fiber. So you can have a silk satin, you can have a polyester satin, you could have a polyester velvet. So it's the weave of it. And they're both of those weaves are very hard to achieve. Satin, because it's so shiny and flat, that any kind of flaw really shows up. And velvet, because it takes a lot of fabric to make velvet, and cutting the pile evenly is very hard to do. So also both of those things don't wear well if you're trying to work in them. So those would have been only for the for the upper classes. So the fact that they have these portraits on the wall of these people wearing these fabrics is a signal to Austen's contemporaries that their wealth goes back generations. Next slide. So after the 1786 Anglo-French Treaty of Commerce, the English flooded the French fashion market with muslin, which is a soft plain weave cotton lightweight. And so then it surpassed all of the other, people still wore silk, but this was the thing. This was the little black dress of its time. And at the same time, men were shifting to practical, instead of those floral damasks. They were wearing practical things like wool, cotton, linen, and buckskin and subdued colors. So again, we see the democratization of things, just like the furniture arrangements that are getting more kind of collegial. The clothing of the time is getting more middle class. Those practical things would have been worn by working men, or at least men when they were at work on their estates. Now it's just everyday walking around wear, and so it's kind of like the athleisure of our time, in that it's like a lot less formal than they had been for hundreds of years before this. So it's kind of shocking. Okay.
I absolutely want to go forward in the future and think about how people are going to talk about like ladies running around in sports bras and like yoga pants as being like super beautiful and very elegant. I can't wait. This is going to be amazing. Okay. Any questions on house tour or fashion before we continue on into chapter 6? Okay, Kristen answered all our questions, as she does. Okay, chapter 6. Anne is settling into Uppercross, where the Musgroves are warm, noisy, and constitutionally incapable of low-volume living. I see you people. They live in my house. Mary continues her favorite pastime, announcing that she is ill whenever attention drifts away from her for more than 6 seconds. Anne meets the Crofts. They are cheerful, sensible, and refreshingly normal, which is practically a religious experience after her upbringing. The Musgroves reminisce about their late son Richard with a level of fondness that suggests selective memory is a powerful coping mechanism. And Anne becomes the official household's mediator, nurse, babysitter, general fixer of all things. And then beneath all the domestic bustle, Anne is quietly bracing herself for Wentworth's return, which everyone can't stop talking about while she sits there trying not to like have a complete mental breakdown. Okay, so we have this wonderful quote. I hope we shall be in Bath in the winter, but remember, Papa, if we do go, we must be in a good situation. None of your Queen Squares for us. So, Queen Square. It is a reputable area of Bath. It was designed by John Wood the Elder. Apparently not fashionable enough for the Musgrove girls, but it was a part of town that was fairly well-to-do. It was pretty desirable, but not like Laura Place or Pulteney Street. So it just kind of illustrates the old and new dynamic between the younger Musgroves and the older Musgroves. As a fun aside, Austen herself did stay in Queen's Square in 1799. She wrote to Cassandra, I like our situation very much. The prospect from the drawing room window at which I now write is very picturesque. And then in 1801, when they are back in Bath looking for a living situation to stay there permanently, not just to visit, Jane again writes to Cassandra and says that their mother hankers dreadfully after a house in Queen Square. So apparently it was good enough for the Austens, but not the Musgrove sisters. And let's see, we have a note from Brenda. What an ease of finances with the Musgrove farmers versus the Elliots and their straitened circumstances. Absolutely. So breeding isn't everything, apparently. So yeah, we've got the juxtaposition of both of these families is quite noticeable. Okay, so one of the least agreeable circumstances of her residence was there was her being treated with too much confidence by all parties and being too much in the secret of the complaints of each house. So how does Anne's role as the Musgrove's emotional support human show the contrast between what she does for others and what anyone actually does for her? There's lots of examples of this throughout the chapter, whether she's playing the piano for everyone to be able to dance, and then she's like completely ignored and forgotten about, even though she is herself a young person. Just the constant barrage of here, take all my emotions and all my feelings and all my thoughts and all my concerns, and then she has no outlet for herself. Any thoughts on that?
Looks like Elizabeth has her hand raised.
Renata says she's seen it.
Or is that from before? I think
Sorry?
from before. Did you have a comment? Your hand is raised, but I think
Elizabeth.
From before.
I think it's from before.
Okay. Renata said that she's seen as a safe person. So certainly people seem to trust her, which I think probably implies that she doesn't gossip, because otherwise they would stop telling her things. So yeah, I think it's definitely just a a really detailed example or depiction of the fact that Anne she's the consumer of everyone else's drama, and she shares nothing, and they ask for nothing from her.
One of my favoriteest lines in this book is that I believe Mrs. Charles is not quite pleased with my not inviting them oftener, but you know it is very bad to have children with one, that one is obligated to be checking every moment, don't do this and don't do that, or that one can only keep in tolerable order by more cake than is good for them.
I love the part where she's talking shade about how they treat their nursemaid or their nanny, whatever they call her. I'm like, their nanny's too uppity. I thought that was hilarious. They're just all the domestic squabbles, right? Like it's all the same as what it is today. It's just, I'm sure people say things like, I think about, we have opinions about how other people's houses are run, and anyway.
And in the 90, I'm sorry, in the 95 adaptation that we've been showing all the pictures from, I love it because it happens all on the big settee, like, or in the windowsill, but like she's like sitting there and somebody will come up, and then somebody else will come up. Like, yeah.
So this is a stolen slide. If you were with us in the last book, this will look a little familiar. It is the last slide. We totally are going to make it. We have 2 minutes. This is just, I love it when Austen gets a little mean-spirited. It's just delightfully funny. Apparently, the Austen family does not care for a Richard. We don't know why. But it's a common recurring theme. So here's just a whole list of examples of a time when we have some snide, mean-spirited comment about a Richard. So here we hear about poor Richard Musgrove in Persuasion, described as nothing better than a thick-headed, unfeeling, unprofitable Dick Musgrove who had never done anything to entitle himself to more than an abbreviation of his name, living or dead, which is a delightful way to describe a young man who was lost at sea. And then in Northanger Abbey, we have Catherine Morland's father, who was a clergyman without being neglected or poor, a very respectable man, even though his name was Richard and he had never been handsome. In the Juvenilia, in the History of England, which is what this illustration is from here, this is Cassandra who drew this. We have Richard III. The character of this prince has been, in general, very severely treated by historians, but as he was York, I am rather inclined to suppose him a very respectable man. And then we have Austen writing to Cassandra in 1796, Mr. Richard Harvey's match is put off till he has got a better Christian name, of which he has great hopes. So, just a funny little aside. We don't know why they hated Richard so much, but they did. So we have officially completed chapters 4, 5, and 6. We have exciting news because I finally got my act together and fixed the website. So go to the JASNA Chicago website. And you can watch these recordings. So the first recording from last month is posted. You can do it 2 ways. If you go to the news tab at the top, you can see there's blog entries there. You can see we have had 2 blog entries. The birthday toast, so Carl's 250th birthday toast is posted here. And then right below it is last month's presentation. And then you can also go to events, pick book club. And if you scroll, like at the top, there's an overview of what book club is and when we do it. If you scroll down, there's this list of what chapters we're going to read each month, what day the book club is on. This is very British of us because apparently the default date setting is European date coding. Oh. And then the link to the video. So feel free to watch these. If you miss a week, they're here for you. And then another big update, we have a live calendar on the website now. So we have, if you go to the events page, there's a tab for events calendar. And then if you click on the day with the little picture on it, you can see details on the right of what the event is. If it's a Zoom meeting, like a virtual meeting, the Zoom link is in the event box. So here's the list of upcoming things. On June 28th, which is Sunday at 3:00, Caroline is leading another Austen Assembly where we're just getting together informally and hanging out and talking about the other Bennett sister, which if you have not watched is a delight. So I highly encourage you to go watch that. And then July 11th, we'll have book club. August 8th, we'll have book club. And then September 5th, we'll do another, we'll just watch a recording of this presentation from the 2025 AGM together. So if you missed the AGM or this session and you couldn't go, or you were at the AGM but you couldn't go to this session, you can watch it here. We'll do it together. And that's it. We made it 2 minutes late.
Yay.
Not too terrible. Not too shabby.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have
Thanks,
a
everybody, for coming.
wonderful rest of your month.
Thank you.
And next Saturday's
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh yeah, next Saturday is register for the AGM.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
get on it. It's like getting Pearl Jam tickets.
Thank
Yeah.
you.